John Smith and his cousin Billy are heading to the town of Carmax to sell their old Camaro.
Billy and John were driving from Whitehorse. The two of them were traveling in a convoy. It's a very remote area. It's very slippery. It's wintertime.
You're quiet tonight.
Yeah, I'm just a little bit tired, I'm sorry.
Same night, same stretch of road. 16 kilometers behind, a young family drives home after a weekend away.
I wish we'd gotten on the road just a little bit sooner.
They talked to them several times, and they never changed their story.
It's so dark.
They come to the southern tip of the lake, and they come around a corner, and they see this row of lights out in the distance.
There were no towns or villages in that area. Didn't seem to be any reason for those lights to be there, and yet there they were.
And then they think, well, it's a truck. There's no road out there. It's in the middle of the lake.
What is it?
I have no idea.
Plane?
They think it's an airplane, like a 747. Then they think, oh, it's moving way too slowly.
It's blowing.
They were worried as to what this was, and they had thought, well, maybe we shouldn't travel any further. Maybe we should pull off to the side of the road.
Just stop, stop.
It's okay. We won't be long.
They were fairly certain that these lights were all on one large object.
There's nothing else that they've experienced that resembled it.
Daniel.
The mysterious object shoots off. Directly towards Billy and John Smith.
Billy is driving in front of John in a truck. Billy comes down a curve. At that point, he sees this huge row of lights out over the lake. He decides to stop and watch this thing. To Billy, it seemed like it came right over to him, as if it knew he was there. He looks behind him and sees his cousin John. John didn't want to come closer. He stopped way further back. He doesn't know what to do because he was frightened.
Billy was in awe as this thing passed overhead.
The witnesses mentioned the size of a football stadium, which is immense. It's unreal.
Some UFO investigators describe huge craft as motherships, sort of an aircraft carrier for spaceships that smaller craft can fly in and out of.
John realizes, oh, he's got a camera in the car, and he's ripping bags open.
Often you hear from people saying, well, I don't believe in UFOs until I see a photograph.
He couldn't get his camera to work properly.
In some of the close encounter cases, the cameras are affected by some kind of electromagnetic field.
Billy's looking at this thing, and just the sheer size of it, it takes such a long time for it to move over. It takes several minutes. And then the UFO continues to move very slowly over the hill and then disappears.
Let's go.
So they go to the turnoff, which is a few hundred meters down, and they pull over there at the Fox Lake campground.
They were very confused, wondering if we're not hallucinating. This was something real, and we saw it together.
We'll be right back.
The Browns arrived at the Fox Lake campground and they see Billy and John.
Hey, are you guys okay? Yeah.
And there's this exchange of information from everybody saying, did you see that?
Did you see something?
You too?
This is unquestionably one of the best cases in North America. If 2 people see a UFO, or 3 or 4, that adds to the evidence that something really was physically there. It just happened. We have witnesses who have seen it at relatively close range, and multiple witnesses who can verify that they saw a physical object.
Hey.
Not sure of what lies ahead, they decide to travel together. They would not be alone in seeing something strange that night. Similar reports of a large craft were later observed an hour away in the town of Carmax, and 2 hours away in the village of Pelly Crossing. In total, more than 30 witnesses came forward with similar accounts. Drawings submitted by eyewitnesses suggest the object was 4 times the size of a football stadium, making it the largest craft ever registered in a UFO report. Some people thought the object was an airship, but airships rarely fly in winter conditions. A detailed report on the Fox Lake case was filed with the Canadian government. There has been no official response.
A strip of northern paradise at the top of the state, Allagash is home to less than 300 full-time residents. The thousands of miles of pristine woodland are a crown on northern Maine. The men made camp their first day and decided to canoe up the river to fish. After stoking a roaring fire, they headed out. As they traveled along the river, each in turn noticed something strange. A light was following them, seeming to stay on them as they went down the river. They continued on and thought nothing of it. 2 nights later, the light was back. The men were out on Eagle Lake fishing when they noticed it. Charlie decided to try and signal the light. He signaled an SOS and the light beamed down on the men. They decided to paddle back to their camp and, according to them, the light followed the entire way. When they arrived back at camp, their fire, which they had been stalking well before each outing, had completely burnt out, as if they'd been gone for hours upon hours instead of just a few minutes. While strange, the men chalked it up as one of the small mysteries of life and continued on with their trip. The rest of their time in Allagash was uneventful. When they returned home, they claimed they told their families about the strange incident. Other than letting their families know about what they experienced in the wilderness, it would be 12 full years before they even really thought of Allagash again. Fast forward to 1988. Jim and Jack Wiener have not been sleeping well. Allegedly, nightmares are keeping them awake. Nightmares about their camping trip. In these nightmares, all 4 men from the camping trip are on a strange craft, sitting naked on a bench. They report feeling fearful. Confused by these nocturnal terrors, they seek out UFO researcher Ray Fowler for answers. After speaking with Charlie and Chuck, all 4 men agreed to undergo hypnosis to try and figure out what happened in 1976. Allegedly, they agreed to be hypnotized separately and to not tell the other men what they remembered of that night. When the 4 men were brought together, it was found that each had remembered roughly the same thing. They were taken to a ship and experimented on by extraterrestrials. Jack recalled the alien faces, calling them terrifying. Charlie claimed the ship was like a doctor's office and that they had put a panel over his chest and scraped his skin off. Chuck revealed that he had seen the aliens working on Charlie. These revelations rocketed the 4 men into the spotlight. An appearance on the Joan Rivers show and their very own episode of Unsolved Mysteries thrust them into the alien zeitgeist. Convention appearances and book deals soon followed. In 2016, Charlie Rack, after having a falling out with the other 3 men, dropped a bombshell. The abductions never happened, and the Allagash incident was all a money-making scheme. He stated that although he publicly announced that the hypnosis had uncovered long-buried memories, he was lying. As for a motive for this long-running plot, Charlie had this to say.
We were compelled to stay together. All of us speculating that this thing could go into the millions of dollars for each of us. We made very little.
He would go on to admit that the men were using hashish on their fishing trip, and that other than seeing a strange light, he couldn't speak to any other strange happenings. The other men, for their part, remained steadfast in their belief that an abduction happened. The other men claim that Charlie Rack is a short-tempered man with mental problems, lashing out at his former friends. Since the revelations in 2016, Jim and Jack Wiener, along with Chuck Foltz, continue making appearances at UFO conventions, spreading the tale of the time that they were experimented on by aliens. But what do you think? Were the Allagash 4 actual abductees, or was it a ploy to get paid? Let me know in the comments or on Twitter at DreadUnsolved. You can also find me on Instagram at DreadTheUnsolved or on Facebook. If you have an abduction story you'd like to tell, you can reach out to me at theunsolved@dreadcentral.com. Thanks for watching.
Some scientists and even some disinformation organizations like NASA have been telling us that it is mathematically impossible that Earthlings are the only sentient beings in a cosmos comprising millions of star systems. What they haven't told us is that some of those that we call aliens have been visiting Earth for thousands of years. The United States government is well aware of the crashes that occurred in the 1940s, including the 2 that were reported from Roswell, New Mexico, when they began to take the subject very seriously and decided to give it a security clearance higher than the H-bomb. Immediately, they began to try to back-engineer the technology. And over those 70 years, with the expenditure of trillions of dollars, they have managed to build a space-faring fleet, all the while denying the existence of UFOs. Skeptics insist that the visitors couldn't come to Earth because at the speed of light, it would take them too long to get here. One of the first things that we must learn is that gravity travels faster than light. So gravity and anti-gravity machines can do the same. And then there is the question of wormholes, which are aids to celestial navigation. In the mid-1960s, an armada of 50 flying saucers flew south across Europe. The Supreme Allied Commander, Europe, was just about to press the panic button when they turned around and flew north over the North Pole. But as a result of this incident, he ordered that a study be made. It took 3 years to complete, and said categorically that species, 4 of them at least, had been visiting Earth for thousands of years. All of the visitors are much more advanced technologically than we are, and some of them have been sharing their knowledge with us, which is the reason we've been advancing so quickly these last 50 years. They're also more advanced spiritually and serve our Creator God. There is, unfortunately, however, at least one exception that we have to be aware of. So Congress must act immediately to expose the amazing things that will be made public once an amnesty is granted under the National Security Act. Politicians must act at once in order to take back control of America from the cabal. As I have mentioned in other broadcasts, the purpose of these short excerpts is to get people to buy and read books so that they will really know what's going on, because there is no other way to find out. There are literally hundreds of fine books about ETs and the extraterrestrials. In Len Kasten's excellent book entitled The Secret History of Extraterrestrials, he lists dozens of the best ones that existed at the time his book was written. And of course, my 3 books in the trilogy all have some references that are important for anyone who wishes to take a look at those. They are, as I have said before, Light at the End of the Tunnel, The Money Mafia, A World in Crisis, and finally, Hope Restored, an autobiography.
Now, Australia's biggest UFO sighting? A government cover-up, or just a misunderstanding. 50 years after the so-called Westall incident, the truth really is still out there.
What I saw is real. You can't alter that.
Something did happen, and something very, very strange happened.
I think there probably were documents. What on earth has happened to them, I've no idea.
Any way you look at it, April 6, 1966 was a weird day in Westall, Victoria. About 100 school students claimed to see 2 flying saucers land and take off at a nearby park around 11 a.m. Victor Zachary was one of them.
I got a good look at it for probably a good 10 minutes. And even standing a metre from it was radiating some heat. You can feel it.
Even after 50 years, Victor clearly remembers the shiny metallic craft he and his classmates saw.
That looked like glass, black glass. It was breathtaking. You look and you sort of look underneath there, and then they just gradually lift up. Once it got up to about 200 feet or more or whatever, it vanished. Like I saw it and it was gone. Where did it go?
Fireman John Williams arrived at the scene shortly after the incident when he and another officer responded to a call-out.
We didn't really know what to think at the time, but the people who led us up to there were quite adamant, very adamant, that that's where this object landed.
And local reporter Des Carroll also remembers seeing a large circle of flattened grass.
I'd say it would have been about 25, 30 feet across, maybe even longer.
But the student's story was discredited immediately.
The headmaster's given everybody a bit of a hard time, telling me all crazy and this and this. He says it's only a weather balloon. I mean, you can tell the difference between a weather balloon and a disc or whatever there, or a car or something, you know.
It definitely was not any aircraft of the day by any stretch of the imagination, and it certainly was not a weather balloon.
It was amazing, and something that I've never forgotten. it still would take me to my grave. What the hell was that?
According to John, a police officer at the scene said the whole thing had been a hoax.
Boy, I can tell you the reaction of the people when we said it was a hoax call. They were very irate people. A riot almost broke out straight with all the people, and they were yelling out at the officers, "We're not liars, we didn't lie to you."
If it was only one witness, then you'd maybe need a little bit more supportive evidence, but we're dealing with over 100 school students here.
But all official evidence has either gone missing or been destroyed. There are no police records, no Defence Department documents, there's not even a record of John's fire truck call-out. One news report suggests the objects could have been radiation testing balloons that blew off course from Mildura. Any relevant paperwork should be public, but the National Archives of Australia has no information on the incident.
The last thing that a government organisation would do would be to admit to the reality of a phenomenon operating in airspace that they're supposed to be controlling.
If they could find some evidence, it'd be great. At least it backs your story, it doesn't make you look stupid. As time goes on, it just wears off, you just get on with life.
I think it'll always remain a mystery, and that suits the authorities, and it also makes a better yarn.
The best evidence UFO case of all time occurred on the 17th of July, 1957, when a United States Air Force spy plane had a close encounter with an unidentified flying object. The 6-man crew of an RB-47 aircraft, which was equipped with state-of-the-art electronic countermeasures equipment, including 3 electronic intelligence stations manned by highly trained Air Force personnel known as Ravens or Crows, were literally tailgated by an object that continues to defy explanation to this day.
This plane was flying out of Forbes Air Force Base, Kansas, and the crew was on a training mission to shake down the airplane and test out its components. This crew detected and recorded on wire recorders and tape recorders the electronic signals, radar-like in nature, that came from the same direction and location as the UFO. It followed them and then overtook them as they flew over Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and Oklahoma for over 2 hours that night.
The crew involved in the UFO incident was one of the top crews in the wing. They were instructors and evaluators in the standardization division and were highly respected. They had the most experience and the best training. The aircraft commander, in fact, Lou Chase, he made a landing. After takeoff, one of the outboard engines froze up and broke off and broke the wing off there, and he brought the aircraft back in to test his skill and as a pilot. In the back end, the 3 Crows back there were the most experienced, and they trained all of the new Crows coming into the wing. Provenzano and McClure trained me when I came in, as a matter of fact. Eventually, these guys were not on the same crew because they had so much experience and knowledge that they were put on separate crews and became 3 instructors and evaluators within the wing.
As the RB-47 moved over Texas, a brightly lighted object appeared and began to follow the aircraft. Major Chase contacted Radar Station Utah at Duncanville, Texas, which confirmed that their radar had also detected the UFO.
You have a very experienced crew of a very sophisticated airplane having something very strange happen. They see it, they pick it up on their electronics, the whole crew is involved, ground radar is involved, it lasted for a long time. What more can you ask for?
The UFO continued to play tag with the RB-47, which had left its scheduled flight path to pursue the object, until the aircraft began to run low on fuel and turned to head home. The UFO followed the aircraft until the signal finally faded as the crew approached Oklahoma City. In his report on the incident, the Director of Intelligence of the 55th Strategic Reconnaissance Wing stated that he had, quote, "No doubt the electronic signals coincided exactly with visual observations by aircraft commander numerous times." thus indicating positively the object being the signal source. End quote. The Air Force, via Project Blue Book, without any real investigation, concluded that the sightings in northern Texas were an ordinary jetliner. In doing so, they failed to explain the ongoing nature of the incident over several states, the appearance and disappearance of the object, both visually and on radar and electronic countermeasures equipment, and how exactly the Utah radar station failed to distinguish between an airliner that was 600 miles away from the RB-47 and a UFO. Researcher Brad Sparks explains why the RB-47 case is the best ever, contrary to what the United States Air Force said.
Why is it so important? Because it's the only time in history that radio or radar signals have been detected and recorded from a UFO, not just are using radars to bounce signals off a UFO. We're actually detecting something that the UFO seems to be sending out.
This indication of intelligence makes the Blue Book explanation even more absurd, as does the fact that this was not the only time an RB-47 encountered a UFO. Colonel Bruce Bailey recounts his own similar incident.
We were flying a Common Cause mission. This was during the Cuban Missile Crisis, where we flew a mission every day to go down and take a good close look at Cuba and to identify any site that should fire on the U-2 or any other U.S. vessel or aircraft. And on this mission, we would fly down to New Orleans and hit a tanker right over the Gulf of Mexico out of New Orleans, get filled up with fuel, and then head on to Cuba. Well, on this mission, shortly after completing our air refueling, we had some aircraft or something come up, bright light, and intercept us, and ground control was tracking it. They could copy it too. And it wasn't with us that long, probably a total of 10 minutes, but that was broken in the middle with a gap of about 2 minutes when it went away. The difference in our experiences than the other crew was our equipment in the back end. All we got was noise. It just wiped us out. We didn't get any intelligible signals at all.
When asked what it was that they encountered over the Gulf of Mexico, Colonel Bailey, a decorated Air Force veteran, can only offer the same conclusion reached by Major Chase and his crew 5 years earlier.
Unidentified flying object is what would explain it, I guess, because the crew up front could see it. We had no windows in the control compartment. We couldn't see anything. But they could see it, and what they saw jived with what ground control was reporting, and the navigator could also track it on his radar. And it all tied together. There was something there, and it had a capability far greater than anything we could do. In the incident that you're talking about, as well as the incident with my crew, the follow-on was pretty much the same. You had a very thorough debriefing, and in that debriefing you were assured that you didn't see anything, you didn't hear anything, you didn't do anything, and that you would not say anything about it. I've heard of other crews and such running into similar treatment after they reported a UFO, and it got to the point that sometimes you would see something that would actually be a UFO, meaning it's unidentified, but you wouldn't say anything about it, because if you started harping or talking about a UFO incident, that was a good way to end a military career.
Apparently, as far as the United States Air Force was concerned, when its top crews, who were charged with protecting the security of the nation in the midst of the Cold War, and who often came face to face with the enemy, saw something like this, they were really just mistaking it for a civilian airliner. If that was true, any sensible Air Force should have grounded those crews immediately. But instead, they kept on flying, so long as they stayed quiet about what they really saw in the skies above us.
For years, ufologists have been collecting reports from pilots in the military who claim to have had contact with UFOs.
Unfortunately, these reports remain unconfirmed because the pilots are reluctant to come forward. But now, one former military pilot is talking. In Russia, Maxim Cherbakov was so convinced he'd been fired on by an alien spacecraft, he went to court to prove it.
2 years ago, a pilot in Russia came forward and told of a frightening UFO encounter. Risking ridicule, Maxim Cherbakov was determined to tell what he maintains is the true story of his bizarre experience. At 19, Cherbakov was one of the rising stars in the Soviet Military Flight Academy and became the Russian equivalent of a Top Gun. His flying record was impeccable until August 1991. Then, on 2 separate occasions, he had strange mechanical malfunctions in his jet aircraft. On one occasion, he was forced to eject. An investigation of that incident concluded that Cherbakov had acted calmly and rationally. But 12 days later, a third incident would change Cherbakov's life forever.
20th August, second shift. I made 2 flights with my commander, and third flight I made on my own. I gained an altitude of 3,900 meters. Then suddenly, I saw a ball in front of me, about 20 degrees to the right.
He watched the object for several seconds. Then, as it came toward him, Cherbakov tried to radio the base. The light from the UFO was blinding.
A sense of unexplainable fear came over me. On the back of my head, I began experiencing warmth. I felt as if someone was present and watching me. My movements were under control, controlled by someone other than me.
Cherbakov claims the reddish-yellow object started maneuvering around the aircraft. For several minutes, it kept up with the jet's airspeed and mimicked its movements. During that time, Cherbakov was unable to communicate with his base commander. The radio emitted only a squealing sound.
Pilot Cherbakov's description of the UFO moving relative to his own airplane is really quite common.
Dr. Richard Haynes has documented over 3,000 pilot sightings of UFOs.
I have thousands and thousands of cases of pilots in daylight encounters with structured objects, in the sense of having 3-dimensional mass, in the sense of having aerodynamic kinds of flight behavior relative to the aircraft. And so what he describes here fits in very nicely to what I have from hundreds of other pilots around the world.
Suddenly, in rapid-fire succession, the generator in Cherbakov's jet failed. The instruments indicated a fire on board, and the cockpit filled with smoke. The base commander ordered Cherbakov to eject.
I began arguing with the commander because the plane was still above the residential area. My altitude began to drop rapidly. I had to pull the plane out of a nosedive. At the altitude of 1,000 meters, I finally cleared the residential area and I ejected. 4 seconds later, the plane exploded.
Cherbakov landed safely in a field and was rescued an hour later by a military helicopter. While officials combed the wreckage of the jet, Cherbakov was examined at a military hospital. An intensive 3-day interrogation followed.
The interrogation was conducted with a sense of total distrust toward me. Right from the start, they told me that the first, the second, and now the third incident is all your own doing.
Cherbakov was also interrogated by the KGB, who did not believe his story and charged him with insubordination and sabotage under the International Terrorism Act. Cherbakov claims the KGB threatened that if he did not tell the truth, he would be brought to trial, found guilty of terrorism, and shot by a firing squad. Vladimir Azhaja heads the Russian Center for the Study of UFOs, housed in the Ministry of the Interior in Moscow. Dr. Azhaja is considered one of the world's foremost experts on UFO phenomena and has studied Cherbakov's case.
We concluded that Maxim has a normal, healthy psyche and is not inclined to fantasies.
Retired Major General Albert Stubblebine is a former commanding general of U.S. Army intelligence. He witnessed and documented a hypnosis session conducted with Cherbakov by an American psychiatrist.
As she was taking him into the trance, he changed from this terrorized, fear-ridden kid into a pilot, sitting in the cockpit, sitting in the seat, sitting with the controls, relating what was going on. There was a change in the individual.
Anybody can fabricate. The question is, was he fabricating? And he struck me as a person who, in that situation, was not fabricating. Whatever it was that he was saying, he truly believed had happened to him. Maxime really believed he had not done anything wrong, in fact, had done the right thing, and desperately wanted this sorted out.
Although affidavits to that effect were presented at his court-martial hearing, the court still blamed Cherbakov for the destruction of his aircraft. But the military prosecutor admits that some of the evidence of Cherbakov's innocence was very convincing.
From the beginning, I had doubts about the truthfulness of Cherbakov's statement. But after questioning his mother, his comrades, and his superiors, I became convinced that Cherbakov had an encounter with a UFO.
In January 1992, the case against Maxim Cherbakov was dropped. But despite this vindication, he was not welcomed back into the military.
There is no training for pilots to deal with such encounters. The older pilots told me that a lot of encounters happen, but they don't speak about them. I feel that I'm missing something from my soul that I want very much. My love for the planes and flying has remained and will continue to remain.
Did Maxim Cherbakov see a UFO? We may never know the answer, but one thing is clear. Maxim Cherbakov ejected only after he saw that his jet would avoid populated areas below. There is now a movement underway in Russia to award Cherbakov with a medal for heroism.
According to UFO researcher Richard Haynes, up to 15% of all pilots, both military and commercial, have reported some kind of contact with a UFO. Haynes believes the actual number could be quite a bit higher, since countless pilots are understandably reluctant to come forward.
Vale, que no Rossi, se es veu, és igual, si podem fer una miqueta més a baix, no ficaré.
We are not alone. A bright, shining object has been filmed hovering in the sky above Falkirk in Scotland. UFO experts say it's the best footage ever seen of a possible alien spaceship.
My name is Councillor Billy Buchanan from Bonnybridge. I have been a councillor for over 25 years and just been re-elected for another 5 years.
This is Norfolk in 1993. Has any explanation been given for what these are?
Call me Billy, by the way. Billy.
Billy.
Yeah, I'm too young to be called Mister.
Okay.
I've never, ever, on any documentary, anywhere, any film or that, told them about aliens. Have I ever met an alien? A friend of mine had come into my house one evening in 1992 and started telling me about a phenomenon that he had experienced while travelling with his car. He was very frightened. So what happened was, to find out if there was anybody else that saw the same phenomenon that he had saw, I put it in the local press. I could not believe at that particular time how many people had came forward. And that was really the beginning of the Bonnybridge Triangle. The triangle actually can stretch as far, I would say, probably 20 miles. It goes by Falkirk, and it goes by Cumbernauld, and it goes towards Stirling. The whole area of Falkirk is about 165,000 people. The people that have actually said that they saw something or they believe that it's there is probably well over 60,000. And it's not diminished. We still have sightings probably every week. There's somebody will phone me up and say that they saw something that they can't explain. Because what you've got to remember is that a UFO is an unidentified flying object. We have these individuals who call themselves ufologists. Now, I've met them from all over the world, but nobody has ever come in here and actually gave us a defined answer what's happening in Bonnybridge. There are so many different theories. The latest one is time travel. You know, the people believe that the Americans and the British and the Russians have cracked time travel, and what the people in Bonnybridge are seeing are actually us in the future coming back. There's also this, they're saying that there's a major UFO base in the sea not far from Bonnybridge, and that people have actually seen them coming out the water. The theories are there. I mean, there's so many theories, but the fact of the matter is that I've still got an open mind about everything. One of the problems that we have in this country, and it happens everywhere, is the misinformation that comes out from our own governments, who for whatever reason don't want to tell us the truth. I would not believe one word that would come out of any politician's mouth or a government in relation to major issues like this, because somebody knows, but they're not telling us.
Councillor Billy Buchanan is a popular local figure who's championed many causes, gaining a reputation as a man of the people. But even he was stunned when locals came to him with stories of strange objects in the skies.
Since this first happened in 1992, I have went down to London to every Prime Minister that's been in since that period of time, asking them to do an investigation into the Bonnybridge phenomena. Now, when the Scottish Parliament was set up, I went to the Scottish Parliament, the same, and asked them to investigate into what was happening in the Bonnybridge area. And as yet, there is no politician or political party or government or Prime Minister that has taken this on.
I'm writing a letter at this moment to Tony Blair, the new Prime Minister. I'm saying, will you get in here and give us an explanation? Now, it might be a logical explanation or a rational explanation, but we demand an answer.
So far, Councillor Buchanan's extraordinary request for a government inquiry hasn't been taken up. Meanwhile, in the Falkirk Triangle, residents report that the number of alien visitors is still increasing. But then, of course, that includes the English tourists who've come up to see what all the fuss is about.
We've got many people that come into the Falkirk district for tourism, but obviously people come to Bonnybridge because they've seen something on the TV or a DVD about the phenomenon that's been going on here for so long. So people that's just got an interest in ufology or UFOs will come into Bonnybridge. But we haven't got anything catered for them. We don't have a shop that sells any goods or items. We don't want that, and I don't want that. Over the years, I've met a lot of strange people that suddenly turn up at my house or suddenly turn up at my office, and they want to talk to me, or they've got a theory. Everybody's got a theory, and that's good, because remember that you've got to have an open mind. I had a major seminar in Falkirk. 2 weeks before it, I had got a phone call that says, "My name is Phyllis Schlemmer, and I want to tell the people why there are so many sightings in Bonnybridge." So she came all the way over from America, but she had somebody with her. And the person, she called them Harmony. Harmony had long hair down here, had big slanted eyes, and she had her coat like that, but her hands were like a crocodile's. Now, if I had to tell you that I believe that she was a reptilian, which apparently is one of the species of aliens that apparently are on Earth, according to Nick Pope. Nick Pope is a government, what I would call an agent provocateur. He's with the Ministry of Defence. He is a debunker, but he now goes out and tells everybody that there's 7 different species of aliens that are coming to Earth. So what happened was, when she was going back after the show, and when she was going back to Edinburgh to get her plane to America, I spoke to Harmony, and I said to Harmony, can I say I would like to thank you for coming? By the way, she took no part in it, she was just there. I said to Harmony, everybody believes that you're an alien. And we still believe she was an alien. Me and my family have suffered personal attacks by the media. The local media and the national media portrayed Bonnybridge as a sort of laughing stock. And also myself, as being a local politician, you can imagine that people were easily to criticise somebody in my position who believed in UFOs. What I have said since day one, I believe in the sincerity and the credibility of the people that came to me and told me about a sighting. I've even had some abduction cases. We've had abduction cases in Bonnybridge. We've had crop circles in Bonnybridge. You name it, they're there. Now the fact is that over the years, over that period since 1992, Bonnybridge has now gained the credibility that it deserves. Nobody laughs if somebody in Bonnybridge or in the Falkirk and Bonnybridge Triangle says that they've seen something. Now, I still don't know what it could be. Is it military? We don't know, but we demand to know.
Okay, gentlemen. Okay. Bon voyage. Bon voyage. Bye.
My point is this: if I had $1 for every time somebody has asked me why Bonnybridge, I would be a multi-millionaire. And you know what my answer is to everybody? Why Bethlehem?
In spite of considerable harassment, professional pilots continue to come forward with their accounts of incredible encounters with UFOs. Inventor and author Dr. Richard Haynes is seen here working with his computerized research file of over 3,000 UFO sightings by commercial and military pilots. Because good eyesight and sharp abilities of observation are required to become a professional pilot, Dr. Haynes believes that the testimony of these credible witnesses cannot be ignored.
We're not dealing with mental projections or hallucinations on the part of the witness, but with a real physical phenomenon.
One of the most thoroughly investigated cases in Dr. Haynes' file involves the near collision of a UFO with a United States Army helicopter piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Lawrence Coyne and his crew. While flying over Mansfield, Ohio, at 11 p.m. on October 18, 1973, they observed a bright red object which paralleled their craft and then rapidly moved toward them on a collision course.
I looked out the window and observed this light moving at a very excessive speed, in excess of 600 knots, coming at the helicopter. It looked like a locked-on missile.
A family of 5 in a car observed the strange red object on a collision course with Colonel Coyne's helicopter. They pulled off the road to watch.
The thing that makes this particular evening a unique experience was that it was almost a mid-air collision with an object that we, or you know, as a UFO. We did not know it was such until it was on top of the helicopter, and that took just a matter of minutes.
Colonel Coyne put the helicopter into a dive to try to avoid impact. When he and his crew looked up, the object was keeping pace with them.
While it was in this position, the green light came out from the undercarriage of the UFO.
Colonel Coyne cut the power and set the controls for a steep dive. In spite of this, the helicopter was pulled upward toward the UFO from an altitude of 1,700 feet to an altitude of above 3,700 feet. Colonel Coyne and his crew observed the strange UFO at close range for approximately 2 minutes.
The object that I viewed that particular evening had a high degree of technology. It was composed of a structure and a design that we do not have. The object can move through the atmosphere without causing any turbulence. It can move at high speeds below 10,000 feet. There are no vertical or horizontal stabilizers, no landing gear, no source of propulsion reflected on the craft. Looks like it could go fly in space.
This document is the result of years of investigation into Lieutenant Colonel Coyne's helicopter encounter with a UFO. It verifies the facts just presented to you. Lieutenant Colonel Coyne felt so strongly about his UFO experience that he became part of a delegation to the United Nations that tried to encourage the UN to deal with the subject of UFOs. Increasingly, UFOs have become the subject of serious investigation by professional scientists. One of the 12 scientists to give evidence before the U.S. congressional hearings on UFOs is California nuclear physicist Stanton Friedman, who spent 14 years in private industry working extensively on classified government-sponsored projects such as this nuclear rocket engine and other advanced space systems. Since 1970, he is the only space scientist known to be devoting full time to UFOs.
After 21 years of study and investigation, I'm convinced that the evidence is simply overwhelming that our planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled vehicles whose origin is off the Earth. In other words, some UFOs, underline the sum about 10 times, are somebody else's spacecraft. Now, I'm only concerned with those UFO reports which indicate things of definite size, shape, surface texture, whose behavior clearly indicates that they were manufactured somewhere other than Earth.
The kind of behavior that Stanton Friedman is talking about is the ability to go 10,000 miles per hour in the atmosphere as observed on radar and make sharp right-angled turns.
Nobody on planet Earth is able to duplicate that behavior.
This event took place October 21st, 1978, out of Melbourne, Australia. It achieved worldwide attention here in America as well. A young pilot named Frederick Valentich was flying by himself in a rented Cessna 182 long-range model. He took off in the evening en route over Bass Strait, which is out over the ocean south of Australia, to go to King Island. He's going to land, refuel, buy some crayfish, which are a delicacy, and then come back with the crayfish that night. Why is he doing this? In order to earn more flight hours for a commercial license, and also instrument rating and so forth. Well, what happens is he gets approximately 6 minutes out over Bass Strait, which is now pitch dark, and he sees a very strange lighted object ahead of him that hovers above him, that disappears instantaneously, and then reappears in a new location, which is a long shape. He said, Melbourne, I've got a long shape. It's got a green light. Would you know what kind of aircraft I've got? Well, this radio tape, which lasts 14 minutes, really constitutes all the evidence there is on this case. And I've done an analysis of that voice tape and reconstructed the event. And Frederick Valentich disappeared at the end of this event this evening and has never been found. It's a very fascinating case because of all of the challenges to understanding what might have happened at a distance, in this case in Australia, from here in America. The search and rescue operation went into effect the next morning. He did not arrive on time, and so automatically the authorities set up an SAR, it's called, Search and Rescue Operation. The Royal Australian Air Force got into gear and flew P-3 search planes. His friends at the air club mounted an effort and took off and flew crisscross patterns and so forth the next day, several days actually. They could find nothing. No wreckage has ever been found. The long-range model Cessna had flotation tanks in the wings in various parts of the fuselage. So something should show up sooner or later on a beach. And the parts of the aircraft fuselage have serial numbers stamped into them. And so sooner or later, something should show up, but nothing ever did. The Maritime Commission, or the organization, I should say, in Melbourne, issued a notice to ships at sea to be looking for wreckage at all, and oil slicks on the water. Nothing was ever found. The continental shelf at this point, I don't remember the exact depth, but it's fairly shallow. And of course it is mapped very precisely for naval reasons. I don't believe any detailed underwater search was done. I don't believe so. The case is very interesting from the standpoint that here's a young man who had a wonderful career ahead. He was bright, hardworking, honest as far as we can tell. He had everything to lose by making up a story like this.
The close encounters between passenger jets and UFOs are spreading. Bariloche, Argentina. Aerolíneas Argentinas, flight number 674, was coming in for a landing. Only 2 planes were in the sky. A passenger flight and a military jet several miles away. Then, something else appeared.
Our worries began when we saw the light. We consulted with the tower, and they said they didn't know of any other craft in the area.
Air traffic control asked Polanco if he was talking about the military jet. He wasn't. The passengers could see something outside.
The first impression was shock from the people inside the plane. The lights of the object were well defined. There was an orange light on top of it, green lights on the side, and the solid part of the object was dark.
And it was close.
I was looking through the window and I saw blue lights and orange lights passing very quickly through very close to the plane.
We heard the AA pilot saying that there was something flying parallel to them. The controller said it couldn't be. They couldn't see anything. The control tower then called us to ask if we didn't see anything, some feet above the AA flight and paying attention to its communication. We told the controller that we couldn't see anything. Just after that, we heard the AA pilot say that the lights of the airport had gone out.
ground crew struggled to turn the lights back on in time for the plane to land.
There was a general power cut throughout the city, which made us use the emergency services at the airport. I told the control tower that we couldn't generate electricity anymore, and that they should tell the plane to start an escape maneuver, because we couldn't keep even the emergency lights on properly.
Without airport lights, Polanco had to abort his landing. That's when Colonel Sapuzak claims he saw a blinking amber light race by at about 800 miles an hour. Suddenly, the light flew up above his jet.
The lights at the runways on the airport were gone. We started our escape maneuver, and I noticed that the crew started getting nervous.
People were very nervous. They didn't know what was happening, and they were asking, wondering what was happening, that we couldn't land.
Polanco says the object seemed to wait for his plane over a nearby lake.
We saw the UFO again, waiting for us in our trajectory. Once we finished our turn toward the airport, the UFO disappeared below us.
Suddenly, the airport lights came back on, and Polanco was able to land.
We were approached by the airport director, who asked me for the report of what had happened. He had to take it to the authorities.
But the Air Force refused to conduct an official investigation. Polanco took matters into his own hands.
I decided not to keep quiet about it, so I decided to let the public know what happened that night.
I would like to know what it was, since the light was flying in a very strange way. It didn't fly like a normal plane.
Polanco is obsessed with what he saw because he claims he could sense an alien intelligence.
I had the impression that this object could foresee what I was thinking. This is an experience that has changed me for the rest of my life.
Next on Unexplained Mysteries.
The time is 4 o'clock in the morning on January 5th of the year 2000. Several police officers and civilians witness a massive triangular-shaped object, and it moves aerodynamically like no aircraft known to the common man. What follows is a detailed reconstruction and analysis of what constitutes a landmark UFO sighting. The story is retold by the actual witnesses and incorporates the actual police radio transmission tapes from that cold January morning.
I got in here about 4 o'clock in the morning, and as I got out of my pickup truck, I happened to look over in the northeast, and I seen that bright star, which I thought it was a star, shining down this way. So I goes in the inside, was in there for a few minutes, and came back out to get in my truck, and I looked over there again, and I thought to myself, well, that's awful bright and awful low, and I just kept watching it, and I went, it's moving. So I kept my eyes on it, and I just, as it came into the city of Highland here, over these trees right here, I could see under it. It was like a custard red lights, and it was like a 2-story house with a little penthouse on top, and had, I don't know, 6 or 8 windows in it, and there was just a bright light on the inside, but all the same. And as it was traveling so slow, right over these treetops, it just kept it moving, and I was just standing here watching it going out of Highland, and there was windows in the back of it, and I thought to myself, I could barely see it, well, there would be nobody would believe me what I seen if I don't tell somebody. So I figured, well, I'll go down to the police station and to see if they could see anything.
Well, I just received a call from Highland PD. Reference to a truck driver just stopped in and said there was a flying object in the area of Lebanon. It was like a 2-story house. It had white lights and red blinking lights, and it was last seen southwest over Lebanon. Leslie, could you check the area?
I asked CENTCOM if they were joking, because again, I joke around with some of the dispatchers there, and they said negative.
It's a joke, right? No, this is not a joke. I just got off the phone with Nancy from Highland PD.
So I like, okay, so I asked him if the person reporting was 1055, which means DUI or drunk.
10-4, did they say if the truck driver was DUI or anything?
And they said no.
He said he was serious.
10-4 now.
Now, during this whole time, while driving out here, I'm kind of going back and forth with St. Clair County, asking, well, what am I supposed to do if I find it, you know, that kind of thing. And
just a quick question. If I happen to find it, what am I supposed to do with it?
they asked me if I wanted the number for the UFO hotline. I said negative. Even if I saw it, I'm not going to report it.
If I see it, I'm not saying a word.
I just like change my mind about that.
Also be advised about the last thing that went over Lebanon, this was approximately 5 minutes ago, was a military cargo plane. It looked like a C-5. Affirmative, the air recognition lights got green, red, and also white.
Right in here, when I first saw, again, the double lights, that would have been a little to the left of the one street light and the red flashing light, which is a radio tower out in Summerfield, about 2 fingers to the left, the flashing red radio tower.
They were almost touching, and they were so bright. It at first almost looked like car headlights on brights, but they were bigger and brighter than the like street lights that the farmers have around their houses and so forth. Well, I called CENTCOM to let them know what it was I saw, and then I was going to investigate.
Be advised, there's a very bright white light east of town. Looks like it's just east of Summerfield, and it keeps changing colors. I'll go there and see if maybe it's an aircraft. It doesn't look like an aircraft, though.
And then I didn't really speed up that time because I wasn't sure exactly what it was I was seeing. It was at that point when I turned on my overhead emergency lights, because again, and my rig-wag flashers, because I wasn't sure whether it was a plane going down or not.
When I next saw it, it had turned from 2 into 1, again, gigantic bright light. And during all this, including when it was the 2, there was white light radiating off of it, almost like the Japanese rising sun battle flag.
Okay, we're now coming up. I'm getting ready to turn on the East Route 50.
When I got to the bridge at the very east end of town, it had turned into like an elongated cigar. Again, very intense bright light with the white light radiating off of it. I still had my overheads on, continuing towards Summerfield, which is eastbound, and it was still at about the 1, 2 o'clock position from where I was at.
Ground 5404. If you would you contact Scott Air Force Base to see if they have anything flying in this area, please?
It was right here when I noticed that it looked like it was coming towards me. The light appeared to be getting bigger. That's why I thought it was definitely moving. It was kind of moving from my right to the left.
When I saw it was definitely moving towards me, I pulled over to the side of the road. And right where I pulled over, there's a sign that says test pavement next 21 miles, big green sign.
I turned off the overhead lights, the headlights, turned off the car, and got out of the car on the driver's side. I was standing over here when it got closer. That's when I was able to discern the actual shape, the triangle, and so forth. When it got about approximately 150, 200 foot south of my location and about 1,000, 1,500 foot high off the ground is when it made the flat turn, started heading southwest again very, very slowly, almost like a floating or a moving hover. I reached back in the car, picked up my radio to tell CENTCOM where it was at and so forth. And when I looked up again, which is space about 2 to 3 seconds, it was already over Shiloh, which is about 6 to 7 miles to the southwest.
10-4, well, whether it's a plane or not, it's heading westbound now. It should be really close to Scott now. Matter of fact, if the shadow officer looks up, they can probably see it by now. 2550, I see something, but I don't know what the heck it is.
On January 5th, about 4:30 in the morning, Ledman gets a call for this flying object, and after he had seen it and said that it might be in Shiloh or Lebanon, I'm driving right here, eastbound Lebanon Avenue, and right in this field is where I observed it.
CENTCOM 5404.
I had looked up in the sky and observed this huge arrow-shaped, triangular-shaped object just floating in the sky right in the open field right over here. And it had 3 big bright lights lighting up the entire sky just beneath the flying object. And it was just floating gradually west-southerly along this field over here at a gradual, slow speed. And as I stopped right up the road here to get out and see if I could get a picture or observe it better, the object.
On March 27, 1974, the Betts family investigated a small bush fire near their residence in George Island, Florida. The family came across a small metal sphere the size of a bowling ball. Their first thought was the sphere had been a cannonball left from New World conquistadors. They decided to take the sphere back to their house. Several days later, Terry was playing the guitar in their home. The sphere seemed to react to the sound of the guitar. It made a throbbing noise. Later, the sphere was noticed to roll on its own and even stop on its own, and change direction. The Bettses reported that the sphere moved on its own several times, and that it would follow people around the house, seemingly on its own. The family concluded that because it moved more ferociously, when the sun was shining brilliantly, and was subject to solar radiations. Terry began his own experiments. When struck with a hammer or shaken, it rang loudly and rolled all over his room. The family put the Betts sphere in a box to prevent it from rolling around the home, and carried it out to show family and friends, who were enthralled by it. NASA was made aware of all this interest in the Betts sphere. Their preliminary investigations revealed that the steel sphere had not been created or altered. Military officials requested that the sphere be returned to their laboratories for more research, but the Betts family refused. The military grabbed the sphere and took it with them, doing what they do best. At Jacksonville Naval Air Station, the sphere was carried, but X-rays were unable to reach the center. Additionally, they learned that it could sustain pressure of 120,000 pounds per inch too. The Navy utilized a 300 kilovolts X-ray that revealed two objects encircled by a halo of materials and revealed 4 magnetic poles, 2 positive poles and 2 negative poles. The sphere was discovered to contain radioactive materials by one researcher, Dr. Carl Wilson, who thought it contradicted the principles of physics. The materials inside the sphere were heavier than any that were previously recognized by science. The Betts mystery sphere is a small metal sphere, with a diameter of 20 centimeters, and weighing 10.0 kilograms. It is the topic of many conspiracy theories and news articles. Although many theories have been proposed since the Betts sphere was found, experts are still perplexed and have no idea where it originated from, or what it does. A 2012 analysis by Skeptoid revealed contemporary media analysis that indicated the sphere was a ball check valve, produced by the Bell & Gossett Company. Its size, weight, and metallurgical composition matched those of the company's ball check valve. Skeptoid also revealed analysis of the sphere's seemingly autonomous motion, noting that the sphere sat quietly on display inside the Betts home for nearly 2 weeks, and is not reported to have ever moved on its own at all, except for when someone took it down to experiment with it, and quoting a representative of the United States Navy who stated that, "I believe it's because of the construction of the house. It's old and has uneven stone floors. The ball is almost perfectly balanced, and it takes just a little indentation to make it move or change direction." As well, Skeptoid noted coverage of New Mexico artist James Derling Jones, who had been collecting scrap metal for use in sculptures. Derling Jones reported having loaded ball check valves into the rooftop luggage rack of his Volkswagen bus, and having driven through the Jacksonville area around Easter of 1971, at which time a few of the balls rolled off the luggage rack and were lost. Skeptoid concluded that this was the sphere's origin. The location of the Betts sphere is unknown, so we will probably never know the real truth, but space enthusiasts from all over the world are still baffled by it.
One of the important things throughout all of their interaction with humanity was not to be recognised and not to be seen. because humans record in stone. We're very good at that. We create. We're fantastic like that as a race. So they recreate, and the reptilians didn't want that. You will see it occasionally in some of the Sumerian or Assyrian, Babylonian carvings. Occasionally, you will also see it in some of the Mayan or Aztec items. What you're much more likely to see are renditions of feline species from the Egyptian times, because they weren't covered by the same protocol. So they weren't, there was no ban on depicting them, whereas there still is now a ban on depicting reptilians, and I'll give you absolute proof of that when I did that very nice interview on the Today programme with Holly Willoughby and Schofield, and I did 2 drawings, one of a mantid and one of a reptile, and I was told point blank we're not allowed to put the reptile up because they were going to have me as a backdrop, them as a backdrop to me. So the stills I've got, which they very kindly sent me, I'm being interviewed with them, and behind me is a picture of the mantid. But originally, Schofield and gang were going to have the mantid and the reptile, and somebody very high up said we're not allowed. They didn't even know what it was called. All they said to me was, we've been told we can't put this one up. So there's a blanket that goes out, and hence, if you think about what your title of this DVD is, because we're coming round to that now, and you think about that chapter in The Greatest Secret that David Icke wrote, which was don't mention the reptiles, and that's a fact, and David's absolutely right, that the system doesn't want to publicise them because they have signed an agreement not to publicise them. It's to keep them out. So you can talk about the greys as much as you want. That's not an issue. You can talk about the mantids as much as you want, because they don't manipulate humanity. The reptile race that we're talking about manipulates humanity and has done for thousands of years, and has a covenant with the elite humans who run the world that they will always be in the shadows.
In December 1980, United States military personnel, located at the twin bases of RAF Bentwaters and RAF Woodbridge in Suffolk, England, observed strange lights and one or more UFOs in the adjoining woodland, known as Rendlesham Forest, and over the military bases. At approximately 3 a.m. on December 26, security personnel on patrol near the east gate of RAF Woodbridge observed unusual lights which appeared to be descending into the forest. Upon leaving the base and entering Rendlesham Forest to investigate, several military personnel observed a metallic, triangular-shaped object with colored lights which had landed in a clearing. 2 of the men approached the object, and one of the men was able to touch it. 2 nights later, the lights returned, and Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Hawke decided to investigate the matter himself to debunk the issue and close the matter permanently. With a small party, Hawke left the military base and entered Rendlesham Forest. Once in the forest, Hawke's party encountered a UFO which navigated through the trees and, from time to time, sent beams of light to the ground. In order to document the investigation, Holt recorded comments during the investigation on a handheld tape recorder.
Suspected impact point. Having a little difficulty, we can't get the light on to work. Seems to be some kind of mechanical problem. Let's send it back and get another light on. Meantime, we're going to take some readings at the gather cutter and chase around here a little bit, waiting for another light on to come back in. Still hanging up? Yes, that's more than a pod number. Okay, we're now approaching the area within about 25-30 feet. What kind of readings are we getting? Anything? Just minor clicks. Minor clicks. What are the impressions? Is that a little bigger they are? Well, there's one more well. So is the security control? We're still getting clicks. We're now on the 5/10 scale, and we're reading about third, fourth increment. Okay, we're still comfortably safe here. You don't have a light on, full gas ready? Security. Can you have them? There's still minor readings. The second pod indentation. Security. This one's good. Let's go to the third one over here. Yes, now I'm getting some residual. I can read now. The meter's definitely giving the pulse. Okay, so I was going to say, let's go to the center of the area next and see what kind of reading we get out there. You're reading the clicks. I can't hear the clicks. Yes, good. Got about the center, Bruce? Okay, let's go to the center. Yes, I'm getting that's the best deflection of the needle I've seen yet. Okay, can you give me an estimation? We're on the 0.5 scale. We're getting... We have a couple readings. At approximately 01:25 hours. We're getting right at a half of a milliring. Highest point. I haven't seen it go any higher. Okay, we'll go out toward the... Now it's picking up. This is out toward the number one indentation where we first got the strongest reading. Yeah, it's similar to what we got in the center. Not in a pod. This may be in the center. Looks like an area here possibly. It could be a blast. It's in the center. It's hard to tell. You got to take this. My finger's about to freeze. Here too. Up to what, 7? What? Just jumped up to 7/10 there. 7/10 right there in the center? Uh-huh. We found a small blast, what looks like a blasted or scrubbed up area here. We're getting very positive readings. Let's see, is that near the center? Yes, it is. This is what we would assume would be the dead center. Just picking up more as you go along the whole area here now. Up to 7/10 or 7 units, let's call it, on the 0.5 scale. Okay, why don't we do this? Why don't we make a sweep? Here, I've got my gloves on now. Let's make a sweep out around the whole area, about 10 foot out, and make a perimeter run around it. Starting right back here at the corner. Back at the same first corner where we came in. Let's go right back here. Don't let depend upon you counting the clicks. Right. Okay, let's then I can put the light on it and sweep around it. It would fly. Put it on the ground every once in a while. This looks like an abrasion on the chip. Okay, we'll catch that on the way back. Let's go around. One right, hit it there. And then the interest right over here, it looks like an abrasion points into the center. It is. It may be old, though. There's some sap marks or something on it. Let's go on back around. All right. So it gives some extension on there. Yeah, this is an awkward thing to use, isn't it? No, you see, I carried on my ears, but this one broke. Are we getting anything further? I'm going to shut your quarter off till we find something. Picking up? What are we up to? We're up to 2, 3 units. Deflection, you're getting in close to 1 pod. Picking up something. Picking up. Okay, it's still not going above 3 or 4 units. Picking up more frequent. Yes, you're staying steady up around 2 to 3 to 4 units now. Yeah. One of these trees that face into the blast, what we assume is a landing site, all have an abrasion facing in the same direction towards the center. That's interesting. Let's go this way around the circle here. Turn it back down here. Picking up something in the collection. Let me see that. That's kind of funny. You're right about the abrasion. I've never seen a tree never seen a pine tree that's been damaged react that fast. I got a bottle to put that in. Yeah, you got a sample bottle? Just go ahead. For the soil. Yeah, here, sit this on the ground. Okay, from now on, let's identify that as point number 1. That stake there. So you all know where it is. We have to sketch it. You got that, Sergeant Nevels?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Closest to the wood bridge base.
Point 1.
Be point 1. And let's go clockwise from there.
Point 2.
Point 2? So this tree is between point 2 and
point 3. And 2 other personnel requesting to rendezvous with you at your location.
Tell them negative at this time. We'll tell them when they can come out here. We don't want them out here right now.
Okay, the sample, you're going to mark this sample number 1.
Yes.
Have them cut it off and include some of that sap and all. Is between indentation 2 and 3 on a pine tree about 5 feet away, about 3.5 feet off the ground.
I've got some more.
There's a round abrasion on the tree about 3.5, 4 inches in diameter. It looks like it might be old, but strange as a crystalline pine sap has come out that fast. You see those other trees here that are damaged in similar fashion?
Yes, off towards the center of the landing site.
Okay, why don't you take a picture of that and remember your picture, and you got to be writing this down. It's going to be on the tape.
Got a tape measure with you?
This is the picture. Your first picture will be at the first tree, the one between Mark 2 and 3. Meantime, I'm going to look at a couple of these trees over here.
We are getting some.
You're getting readings on the tree you're taking samples from on the side facing the suspected landing site.
4 clicks max.
Up to 4. Interesting. That's right where you're taking the sample now. 4. That's the strongest point on the tree?
Yes, sir. If you come to the back, there's no clicks whatsoever.
No clicks at all on the back. It's all on the
Maybe
side facing the... Interesting. The indentations look like something twisted as it got, as it sat down on them. Looks like someone took something and sat it down and twisted it from side to side. Very strange. We're looking at the same tree we took the sample off with this, what do you call it, star scope?
Star.
You're getting a definite heat reflection off the tree, about 3 to 4 feet off the ground?
Yes, where the spot is.
Same place where the spot is. We're getting a heat.
And the spot on the tree directly behind us, I picked up the same thing, and the one on to your right.
3 trees in the area, immediately adjacent to the site, within 10 feet of the suspected landing site. We're picking up heat reflection off the trees.
Like 5 and up.
What's that again?
Well, shine a light on again, Bob.
Well, you have trouble hitting control? Yeah.
Get right on the spot, and then when you want them,
okay, turn the light on.
You'll notice the white.
Hey. You're right. There's a white streak on the tree.
Indicates
Let me turn around and look at this tree over here now. Just a second. White streak right on the tree. I can see it. Wait a minute. Give me a little side lighting so I can find the tree. Okay. Off. I lost the tree. Okay, stop. Light off. Hey, this is eerie. This is strange. Here, somebody want to look at the spots in the ground? Whoops. What you know? We're walking all over the place, sir. Okay, let's step back and not walk all over. Come back here, somebody put a beam on them. But you're going to have to be back 10 or 15 feet. You see it?
Okay, fine.
Okay, lights off. What do you think about the spot? Yeah. Can I see what the first spot? Okay, that's what we'd call spot number 3. Let's go to the back corner and get spot number 1. Spot number 1. Here's spot number 1 right here. Spot number 1 right here. You need some light? There it is right there. You focused? Okay. Looking out spot number 1 through the starlight scope.
Take a slight increase in light as I go over.
Slight increase in light at spot number 1. Let's go look at spot number 2. Spot number 2 is right over here. Right here. You see it? Okay, get focused on it. Tell me when. Okay. Lights out. Let's see what we get on it. Just a slight increase?
Try to center.
The center spot. Well, it really isn't center. It's slightly off center. It's right there. Okay. I'm going to get your reading on it right there.
Okay.
Tell me when you're ready.
Ready.
Okay, lights out. This is the center spot we're looking at now, almost the center. Slight increase there. This is slightly off center toward the 1-2 side. It's some type of abrasion or something in the ground where the pine needles are all pushed back, and where we get a high reading, about deflection of 2 to 3, maybe 4, depending on the point on it. Yes. So there's a positive after effect? Yes, there is definitely. That's on the center spot. There is an after effect. What does that mean? It means when the lights are turned off, once we are focused in and allow time for the eyes to adjust, we are getting an indication of a heat source coming out of that center spot, which will show up on the screen. Heat or some form of energy. It's hardly heat at this stage of the game. Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like some of them came off about 15 to 20 feet up. Some small branches about an inch or less in diameter. 0148, we're hearing very strange sounds out of the farmer's barnyard animals. It's very, very active, making an awful lot of noise. Yes, and a pigmentation. You just saw a light where? Wait, now slow down. Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Watch, straight ahead off my flashlight there, sir. There it is. Hey, I see it too. What is it? We don't know, sir. So can I get some of it? Yeah, it's a strange, small red light. It looks to be out maybe a quarter to half mile, maybe further out. I'm going to switch off it. The light is gone now. It was approximately 120 degrees from the site. Is it back again? Yes, sir. Oh, that's the flashlight set. Let's move out to the edge of the clearing so we can get a better look at it. See if you can get the star scope on it. The light's still there, and all the barnyard animals have gotten quiet now. Yeah, we're heading about 110 to 120 degrees from the site out through to the clearing now. Still getting a reading on the meter. About 2 clicks. Meter's jumped 3 to 4 clicks, getting stronger.
Now it's now it's coming up. Hold up. There we go. About approximately 4 foot off the ground. It comes ahead to 110 degrees.
All right, just turn the meter off. You got to say that again. About 4 feet off the ground, about 110 degrees, getting a reading of about 4 clicks. Yes, sir. Yeah, but excuse me. No, it's dying. No, it's dying. I think it's something other than the ground. I think it's something variable here.
Tree right over.
We just frightened the first night bird we've seen. We're about 150 or 200 yards from the site. Everything else is just deathly calm. There's no doubt about it. There's some type of strange flashing red light ahead. It's yellow. I saw a yellow tinge in it, too. Weird. It appears to be maybe moving a little bit this way. It's brighter than it has been. Yellow? It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. Pieces of it are shooting off. There is no doubt about it. This is weird. To the left? Yeah, definitely moving left. Two lights. One light to the front, okay. One light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. Get the headset on. See if it gets any stronger. Okay. Give us a rundown.
Notation that this is on a beta reading, too.
It's on a beta reading?
The
okay.
shield has been removed.
Okay. This is we're falling off it again.
It just moved to the right.
Yeah.
Off to the right.
Strange. Oh, why are you going to the left? Let's approach to the edge of the woods up there. You want to do without lights? Still carefully. Come on. Okay, we're looking at the thing. We're probably about 200 to 300 yards away. It looks like an eye winking at you. It's still moving from side to side. And when you put the star scope on it, it sort of has a hollow center, a dark center. It's like a pupil of an eye looking at you and winking. And the flash is so bright to the star scope that it almost burns your eye. We passed the farmer's house and across in the next field. Now we have multiple sightings of up to 5 lights with a similar shape and all, but they seem to be steady now rather than a pulsating or glow with a red flash. We just crossed the creek, and we're getting what kind of readings now? Getting 3 good clicks on the meter, and we're seeing strange lights in the sky. 244, we're at the far side of the second farmer's field, and made sighting again about 110 degrees. This looks like it's clear out to the coast. It's right on the horizon. Moves about a bit and flashes from time to time. Still steady or red in color. Also, after negative readings in the center of the field, we're picking up slight readings, 4 or 5 clicks now on the meter. 305, we see strange strobe-like flashes to the rather sporadic, but there's definitely something, some kind of phenomenon. 305, at about 10 degrees horizon directly north, we've got 2 strange objects, half-moon shape, dancing about with colored lights on them. That gets to be about 5 to 10 miles out, maybe less. The half-moons have now turned into full circles. There's one of those eclipse or something there for a minute or two. 0315, now we've got an object about 10 degrees directly south, 10 degrees off the horizon. And the ones to the north are moving, one's moving away from us. It's moving out fast. This one on the right takes away too. Yeah, we're both heading north. Okay, here he comes from the south. He's coming toward us now. Now we're observing what appears to be a beam coming down to the ground. This is unreal. 330, 0330, and the objects are still in the sky, although the one to the south looks like it's losing a little bit of altitude. We're turning around and heading back toward the base. The object to the south is still beaming down lights to the ground. 0400 hours, one object still hovering over Woodbridge Base at about 5 to 10 degrees off the horizon, still moving erratic and similar lights and beaming down as earlier.
After his investigation, Halt wrote a memo detailing a sanitized version of the night's events which was submitted to his superiors in the British Ministry of Defense. The Ministry of Defense, the United States Air Force, and other governmental bodies investigated the incident and came to similar conclusions which stated that nothing happened in December 1980 at the bases of RAF Woodbridge and RAF Bentwaters, and that the lights seen by military personnel were most likely from a nearby lighthouse as well as stars, other astronomical bodies and astronomical events such as fireballs and meteors. Finally, they concluded the incident posed no threat to the military bases, their personnel, or the national security of Britain or the United States. As of 2005, due to public interest, the Forestry Commission created a trail in Rendlesham Forest nicknamed the UFO Trail. In 2014, the Forestry Service commissioned an artist to create a sculpture to be placed at the end of the trail. The sculpture is based upon sketches that were made by military personnel who took part of the events which occurred in December 1980.